Hey there, I'm Josh, and today I'm going to be just joshing around with my new camera, the Panasonic G95. Not sure if you realize, but up until recently, I've shot almost every video using cameras on my phones. First, the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus, and then a Galaxy S10. Both of which have worked really well for me, especially the S10. And there were a couple of instances where I used my cousin's GoPro Hero 5 Black. And throughout everything so far, these cameras have suited my needs perfectly. However, in the interest of improving and growing my channel, I made the decision to upgrade my camera. And that was in April of last year. I spent the following months trying to figure out exactly what I was looking for. Because just like every other tool purchase I make, I do a buttload of research before I make a decision. I knew there were several main features I wanted. Unlimited 4K video recording, a fully articulating touchscreen monitor, the ability to charge while filming, and the adaptability to change the lenses as needed. All of which while working within a budget. Armed with this knowledge, I began to scour the internet, reading and watching every overview, opinion piece, and review that I could find. I got it narrowed down to several prospects, but I still couldn't make a decision. Then, my wife made a suggestion that I call around to some local camera shops to get their advice. Unfortunately, this endeavor seemed to be fruitless, as the first couple of camera shops that I contacted had employees who admittedly couldn't give me an informed opinion because they didn't know anything about cameras. Despite the fact that they worked at a, camera store. It's okay, fellas. Whenever I take my car in for repairs, I'm always secretly hoping they'll bring out their Amish auto mechanics to help me out. Luckily, the next shop that I contacted had a way more knowledgeable employee. And after I informed him of my intended usage, the features I was seeking, and the budget to which I was constrained, he immediately tried to sell me their newest flagship camera for $5,000! That's right, as a hobbyist part-time YouTube content creator with little to no working knowledge about cameras, I'm certain that nothing would suit my needs better than a high-tech professional camera that costs 5 times what I was planning to spend. The last shop on my list to contact was where I finally struck gold, Premier Imaging in Pittsburgh. Premier Imaging is a one-stop shop serving all of the equipment, development, recording, and educational service needs to the greater Pittsburgh area. The folks there were very helpful, especially Nick, who was extremely knowledgeable and instrumental in helping me make my decision. He spent over half an hour on the phone with me, answering questions, explaining things, and giving me some advice. He even set up a bundle to price match what I found on Amazon, which is great because I prefer to shop locally when I can. The whole purchase process was easy peasy, and I greatly appreciate all the help. After careful consideration and a lot of due diligence, I decided on the Panasonic G95. It had the perfect blend of features, settings, and price that I was seeking. A ton of capability without breaking the bank. So let's jump into it and take a closer look at this camera. As you can see, this is the Panasonic Lumix DC-G95 mirrorless camera. I'll go ahead and unpack the components and then give some details about each one. First, here's the battery charger, the battery pack, the AC adapter, and the charging cable. I might as well go ahead and get this charging while we go through everything else. Next is the lens hood, which protects against both light glare and physical damage to the lens. Then we have the lens itself, which is supposed to be a decent, everyday workhorse type of lens. It's got a lens cap on the business end, and a rear cap on the other end. This is the part that attaches to the camera body. We have a nice adjustable shoulder strap here, and of course, the feature presentation, the camera itself. One thing I noticed and liked right away was just how solid it felt in my hand. Nothing about the body felt cheap or flimsy. Another thing I noticed was how many knobs and buttons there were on this thing, and holy crap, it's kind of intimidating. Like I mentioned before, one must-have feature that I was wanting is a fully articulating touchscreen monitor, and I'm sure that this one won't disappoint. Now let's get this thing put together. First, I got the shoulder strap securely attached on either side. Next, I remove both the dust cap from the body and the rear cap from the lens. To attach the lens, I lined up the red indicator dots and gave it a small clockwise turn until I heard a satisfying. Then I removed the lens cap and attached the lens hood into place. Once that was done, I waited a bit for the battery to complete its charge. Once it was charged, I opened the door to the battery compartment, inserted the battery, and closed it back up again. Next, it was time to install the memory card. I had previously purchased a 256GB microSD card specifically for this camera. I slid it into the adapter and then opened the panel to the memory card slot, made sure the orientation was correct, and inserted the card into the slot. Now it was time to power it on. I'll try to give you a little close-up look through the electronic viewfinder. There's a nice little screen in there, and it's got a really high resolution. But under normal use, I'll be using the main screen here for filming. One cool feature that I wasn't expecting is the digital level indication to help line up the best shots. I'll do a brief run-through of some of the settings and whatnot. I would try to give some explanation here, but unfortunately I'm squarely in the I don't know what most of this crap means camp. Oh, record quality. At least I know a bit about that. This camera has 4K, Full HD, and regular HD resolution capabilities, with multiple frame rates for each. Boy, I've really got a lot of homework to do to develop any sort of familiarity or comfort here. So even if I use this camera for a while, it might be a bit before you guys see any marked improvements. Anyway, you can see here how both the zoom and the autofocus work. But even with just the autofocus itself, there's multiple settings to it to really give you a lot of control over the shot. There's a built-in flash, which is pretty cool. I don't think I'll be using it very often, but it's still nice to have it. It also has a hot shoe mount for any external flash or shotgun mic I might want to use. And of course, that articulating screen that I can't seem to shut up about. Over on the side here is a protective panel, which is covering some external utility and multimedia ports. There's a port for remote shutter control, a headphone jack, a micro HDMI outlet, and a micro USB charging port. Like I mentioned before, the charging port is especially important to me, as I plan to have this camera plugged in while filming most of the time, and a lot of cameras don't have that capability. The last port is for an external microphone, which I plan on using quite a bit. All in all, I think it's a really nice camera that's packed with features and settings, though admittedly it's going to take me some time before I actually know what a lot of those features and settings actually mean. Still, I'm really excited to get to know this thing better, and about the prospective improvements to quality that this camera will help me to make. Now, how about some of those extra bundle goodies? First are these 2 extra battery packs and charging base, which I'm sure will be really helpful. Next is this extra memory card, a 64GB SD card, which I won't use all the time, but it'll be good in a pinch. Then we have the camera bag, and I'm sure it'll suit my needs perfectly. The last part of the bundle isn't something you can see, but it's an extension of the manufacturer's warranty from 1 year to 3 years. And it's something that Nick from the camera store had to jump through a couple extra hoops to help me procure it, so I really appreciate that. Altogether, it's definitely a nice bundle to help me get started. Now I'll try to get some sample shots to show for comparison. This is using the camera on my phone, which once again looks very good. But once you zoom in, you can see that the image gets extra pixelated and noisy. Compare that to the new camera. This is just using the preloaded automatic settings and I didn't tweak anything, but you can already see that the image is much more clear upon zooming in. And I know for certain that this will only improve in tandem with how much my knowledge and experience grows with this camera. Let's take a little time jump here. That was filmed right before Christmas, so I've had this thing for about a month and a half now. Let's see how things have improved. First, I'll show you a 360 pan shot using my phone camera. Like I've mentioned before, this camera's pretty good, so this shot doesn't look too bad. Now let's see how that compares to the new camera. You can notice that the resolution is much more crisp, and that the white and black levels are better defined. You'll notice that the image is still juddery in motion, and that's because the camera maxes out at 30 frames per second in 4K mode. Now obviously I wanted 60 frames per second, but that was something I was willing to compromise on because I was getting unlimited 4K video recording time. Now this side-by-side footage was filmed in full frame with the lenses completely zoomed out. I zoomed in while editing to show the distinct difference in resolution between the two, which is pretty significant if you ask me. Now for this next bit of footage, I completely zoomed in with both the lenses, and to me the difference is a bit more subtle. Though I have to give the edge to the new camera simply because I can distinguish the individual wood grain on the plywood here. Not to mention the more precise control I have on the manual focus, which gives me some freedom to play around with the depth of field on the image. In other words, the focus is aimed squarely on where the blade cuts the wood, and leaves both the foreground and the background a little bit blurry. It's a nice little trick that I plan on exploring a lot more in the future. All things considered, I am loving this camera so far, and I really enjoy playing around with it and learning as much as I can about it. You might not know it, but I actually used it on the past couple of videos that I made. And so far it's worked out pretty well, and I think it's been a good improvement. Well, besides the flickering effect that I had in the Narsil video. But other than that, it's been working great, and I think it can only get better. I'm sure you already knew this, but this video wasn't meant as an expert review of this camera, but as more of a beginner's thoughts on it. Honestly, I was just excited to get it, and I really wanted to share my impressions on it so far. And if any experienced photographers or videographers are watching and you have any opinions or advice for me, please share it below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And if you are subscribed, hit that notification bell. Or don't, I'm not your boss. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.